Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let me get my hat on, and let's get this started. Alright, first question. Jason, I have a question in regards to certain lifting movements correlating to sports. In football and rugby, my sport, power clean, squats, deadlifts, and benching are emphasized for showing power. I don't understand why benching is stressed over, say, the incline bench. What football or rugby coach ever tells you to get even with the opponent and push? They always say get lower and drive up, which in my head would stress the incline benching more because of a show of strength and would carry over. Does this make sense, or am I missing something? Mahalo and have a good day, brother. Alright, good question. I actually agree with you here, not so much necessarily the incline, although I would say for someone who needs pushing power out on a playing field, the closed grip incline bench press wouldn't be a bad choice. Now, as far as the other exercises go, again, coaches I've known. And yes, I do have an NFL coach in my family. Hopefully people have researched enough to know that's true. But the coaches that I know actually care about the power clean the most. Like if you talk to a coach who wants to know your athleticism on a playing field, your power clean is what they look at. Now, deadlifts and squats do matter, but generally most of them I've met, they really want to see a strong power clean. That's what they want to see, because that actually tends to have a more athletic, more explosive athlete out on the playing field. Squats, what seems to be the case with squats, and it's been noted over the years, that up to about a double body weight squat, increasing your squat will increase performance on the field. However, anything more than about a double body weight squat tends to not really be worth pursuing, and it's not because strength is never a weakness. Well, in this case it can be. The reason being is that it's not overly difficult for a good athlete who's a well-balanced athlete with decent genetics for their sport to get to a double body weight squat. That's totally doable. Not particularly difficult to make that happen, and that's the point. It yields a tremendous amount of explosive speed running out on the field or hitting someone, or the ability to move fast, the ability to sprint. After that, it seems to give not only diminished returns, but getting beyond a double body weight squat requires more specialization, and that specialization takes training and recovery time away from more sport-specific things for the most part. So usually going beyond that, unless you're just genetically really good at the squat, isn't that worthwhile. Deadlift obviously makes sense, overall full body strength. When it comes to the pressing, if someone were to ask me personally, which pressing exercise would I like to see field athletes who have to hit someone, what would I like to see? The push press. The push press. It's going to blow the bench press out of the water, and even in the incline. And when you think about it, what do you do on a push press? When you're on an incline bench, how much leg drive can you really use? Not a lot. The push press requires you to still push upward, so when you're down low, you're pushing upward. It uses a lot of chest. But it trains you to use explosiveness in your legs concurrently. Now, when you think about it, when you hit somebody on a playing field, I don't care whether it's American football or rugby, are you not using leg drive? Are your quads and glutes involved? So technically, if you wanted the best specificity of training, it would make a lot more sense to put a heavy focus on the push press for that, because that's going to give you more sport-specific carryover to hitting somebody in the guts on the playing field and driving them into the fucking ground, right? The leg drive and glute and hip drive and everything involved with it, it's going to give you better carryover. Now, the beauty of that, let's say your coaches want to test you on the bench press. You come in a bench press once a week, no big deal. The push press will make you a better bench presser. The push press, if you get really strong on the push press, benching heavy isn't going to be that difficult for you. You're not going to have to practice it as much anyways just to hit the performance numbers your coaches want to see for whatever reason. Focus on the push press. That's going to be your bread and butter. And if you wanted another accessory exercise, I mean, the incline close grip wouldn't be bad. Weighted dips wouldn't be bad. But I focus on the push press personally. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I was curious what thoughts you have on rowing on an ergometer, or erg as rowers call it, for cardio or liss. I was a rower for years, and in off season we always did a combination of rowing, machine work, and long distance running. I know for most people they might not be able to reproduce the proper technique for long distance rugs machine work, but I was curious about the upper body wear since it uses a lot more upper body than jogging or biking, though it's still mostly lower body based if you're doing it correctly. There's also the fact that rowing machines are usually easier on joints than running for most people. Thanks for your info. You know what? I think they have their place, but again, I would think about conditioning work in terms of sports specificity. If you're just trying to get in good cardiovascular shape or lose weight, I don't think you need to involve the upper body in your cardio at all. Think about it. The upper body actually creates a weaker link. Your upper body is never going to be as good at endurance as your lower body is. Therefore, sometimes your upper body, even if the lower body is doing most of the work, can become a limiting factor. It's just not worth it. Furthermore, excessive use of endurance work on the upper body might cause problems with strength carryover when you're strength training and everything else, whereas your legs are more resilient to that. I would say that for most people, low impact cardio, now jogging and running can have their place. You just have to be careful with it. There is definitely a concussion aspect to it. There is a microfracture aspect to your bones to it also. It's got to be programmed correctly. But running is fine, but if you wanted lower impact, cycling and swimming work really, really well, particularly cycling. Riding a bike, fantastic for endurance work. For most people, it's better. It's just that for someone who needs additional upper body endurance, like you said, you were rowing competitively, yeah, I can see where the rowing machines would come in handy for that, because you're building that upper body endurance more. Most people aren't necessarily going to benefit from that. Their lower body's always going to have better endurance if they're just wanting to build stamina and cardiovascular conditioning, or just to burn through calories. Focusing on the lower body is actually going to be more effective for most of them. It's just going to depend upon people's specific goals. But, you know, that's what it comes down to. What are your specific goals? What are you trying to do with it? All right, next question. Hey Jason, what tips do you have for increasing explosiveness out of the hole on the squat? I found in the past that when training pause squats, I forgot how to use a stretch reflex. However, when approaching 80+%, I'm incredibly slow out of the hole while I finish the lift very strong. Well, here's the thing that you've got to remember. Everyone tends to be slow out of the hole on the squat. That's the hardest part of the exercise. That's the hardest part to get you accelerating. That's just reality. Anyone who's a strong, explosive squatter is going to finish the top a lot faster. I still believe that the pause squat is the best exercise to get you stronger at getting out of the hole, because it trains you to learn to generate strength and power out of the bottom. It trains you to get better at it. And that's the important thing. That's what you're shooting for. So no, keep doing your pause squats. And then when you need the stretch reflex, spend some time peaking for the stretch reflex. You know, let's say you're going to have a powerlifting meet every 24 weeks. You could spend 12 to 14 weeks doing exclusively pause squats to build your power, build your overall strength. And then the final 10 to 12 weeks, you could switch back over to just bouncing out of the bottom so that you learn to use the stretch reflex again. You can learn to use the stretch reflex again when you know you have a meet coming in a couple of months at any time. Be sure if it takes you a little while to get it back, it'll take you a month to relearn to do it perfectly. But once you do, you will already have built that ability to generate strength out of the bottom faster from the pause work. But the thing that you need to remember is that all your training to some extent needs to be periodized. You can't be perfect at all performance elements year-round. You need to base it upon what you're trying to do. But generally speaking, pause squats absolutely have a very, very strong place in every powerlifter's off-season. Maybe not so much when they're peaking for a meet, but in their off-season, absolutely. And for people who just want to build overall strength, I don't see any reason for most of those people to not mess with the pause squats year-round. Are you trying to ego lift? Are you trying to hit the best 1 rep max? Or are you just trying to build the best overall strength and development? Pause squats definitely work for that. Again, depends upon your goals and what the context of them is. All right, next question. On a relatively high calorie diet in order to gain weight, I'm not overweight, so would it impact my health eating 200 grams of fat per day, assuming it's good fat, i.e. natural peanut butter, etc., alongside moderate amounts of carbs, 600 grams. Remember you discussing that high carb versus low fat, etc. diets are more ideal, whereas I often end up having high amounts of both. Thanks. All right, it's going to depend on how big of a calorie deficit you're doing. If you're eating 200 grams of fat so that you can hit a 500 or 1,000 calorie surplus, you're going to gain extra fat, and it's not going to be ideal for your health. All right, that's not ideal at all. But if you're on a pretty small caloric surplus, because you're saying, it seems to me like you're one of those guys who struggles to gain weight, you know, and you're sitting there saying you're on a really high calorie diet trying to gain weight. You're someone who struggles to gain weight. Now, you're talking about 600 grams of carbs and 200 grams of fat. Just trying to do the math on the top of my head. That's like over 4,000 calories. Am I missing something? Just doing the math off the top of my head, that's over 4,000 calories from carbs and fat. You sound like someone who really struggles to gain weight. If that's what you have to eat to slowly gain weight, meaning that's a very small caloric surplus for you, and you're healthy and active and athletic, I don't think it's going to harm your health at all. Not at all. You're doing what you have to do to gain the weight and muscle that you need to gain. However, if you're on a large calorie surplus, and I'm talking at least 500 calorie surplus, and you're eating 200 grams of fat, no, you're going to gain a lot of extra body fat that you probably don't want to gain, and that extra fat in your diet at that point is probably going to negatively affect your blood work. So honestly, brother, it comes down to how much weight are you trying to gain and how fast are you trying to gain it. If you're the hard gainer type who's extremely athletic, and it sounds like you'd have to be to need that much to gain weight, that you have a very, very high energy turnover, I think it's going to be fine if you're gaining weight very slowly doing it. I'm talking a couple pounds a month tops. I think it's going to be perfectly fine. If you're gaining like 4 pounds a month doing this though, and you're eating a fairly large calorie surplus, I think it's going to be less than ideal for you. I think it's going to be less healthy. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.